Hi, Mom.
Hi.
What's today?
I don't even know the day of the week.
Well, I'll help you
I
out.
think it's Friday.
No, actually, today's Saturday.
Oh.
It's October 17th,
Yes.
1998. And you had a birthday back on the 1st, right?
Right.
And how old are you right now?
Right now, I'm 86 years old and 17 days.
17 days. You're like the Energizer Rabbit, I guess. He just keeps on going. Well, what we're going to do today, for the sake of the family and the kids and their children, the kids' children are my grandchildren, etc. Okay, they're going to have an opportunity to meet their grandma and their grandpa today. All right. Um, Hopefully, we're all still around when they get to actually watch this. But in the event they're not, then we have a record of today, and hopefully we'll get some information about where they came from and how they ended up here. But I'm going to just ask you some questions to keep things going. So I just want you to tell us about. We're just going to talk about the family, and let's just start with you and where you were born, when, and why don't you just start there and start talking.
Well, October the 1st, 1912 was a crisp morning, and it got colder as the day went on. It's not like it is now in California in October. And my mother decided she was going to have a baby. So my dad went out my mother was not a very strong woman, and she couldn't furnish me the milk I needed, so my dad had to walk about 5 miles to buy an old cow to get milk for me. So I was raised on cow's milk. Anyway, it was out in the country, and it was a hard life. My dad was not a farmer. He was born in the town and lived in the town all of his life.
Which town was this?
Madisonville.
Madisonville, Kentucky.
And my mother was a school teacher, and she taught in a little country school. And my dad stopped by to see her one day, and the kids all laughed at him because he sat up in the front of the classroom holding his book upside down pretending to read. And the kids got the giggles over it.
Was that pretty typical though for that period, in that period of time, and for that part of the country, was that pretty typical that men weren't quite as literate and whatnot? The parents of that day.
Yeah, pretty typical. Anyway, my mother was the oldest of 3 children, and she also was born in Kentucky. Her father had settled there on a claim, and had what we would call a ranch out here. It was actually a farm of 187 acres. So when my mother fell heir to a third of that when her father died, and she persuaded my father to come to the country to live where she was teaching school rather than her moving into town.
What did your father do for a living?
My father was not a farmer. He was a plumbing and heating man. And I think they almost starved to death for several years because my dad didn't know one end of a cow from the other. And anyway, they lived there until I was born. And I went to school. My first school, I was 5 years old, and I walked with my aunts and uncle to a little country school, one room, and I would meet them at the corner. There was a forks in the road and a corner down where it came together. My aunts and my uncle would wait there for me, and I'd walk down and walk on to school with them. And it didn't make any difference about the weather. The ground would freeze, and the car tracks would make make the mud freeze so hard that it was hard to walk.
Well, there wasn't really any paved roads in those days too much
No
back
paved
there.
roads, no nothing, just out in the country. Very rural. And I went to school there in my first year in school. My first experience in school was there. And I can remember my teacher. She was a great big fat lady. And she was always giving little prizes for things that kids did. And I can remember a little doll that I won at school, and I was so proud of it because I didn't get very much when I was a kid. We were quite poor. And of course my mother stopped teaching school after I was born. She stayed home. But it was a good family life. Because after 5 years, my sister was born, so that was the two of us. Shortly after that, we moved into the town.
So,
my dad went back to his plumbing and heating.
So you have a younger sister?
5 years younger.
And what's her name?
Eloise.
Okay. Where does she live right now?
She still lives in Kentucky. And she would never leave. As a matter of fact, I tried to send her an airplane ticket to come out to see me a year ago, and she wouldn't come. She won't fly. She's afraid of flying. I always tried to tell her that when your time comes, you're going to go. It don't make any difference if you're flying in an airplane or sitting on the couch. But she's still scared. So she didn't come. So I went back to see her a couple of times. And she lost her husband. She had 3 children, and she lost her husband. The kids were all grown. And she lived by herself then, and still does till today. She's 5 years younger than I am. She was 80 this year. And anyway.
So you moved off the ranch, your 187 acres or whatever?
Yeah. And
Do you remember that? Do you remember living on the farm out there with all that land?
I remember one time an old turkey gobbler chased me around the house, too.
So your dad did acquire some animals after getting out there on the land.
They had chickens, and my dad hated chickens. And he wouldn't eat one if his life depended on it.
What was your dad's name? His full name?
Wyman.
Wyman?
William.
William Wyman?
William.
Or Wyman William?
My dad liked to play in a band. He played with the city band when we went back to town. They had organized a city band, and it appeared for all kinds of celebrations, 4th of July, all those. And they had city parades. He'd always take part in that. He played the trombone.
Cool.
And he belonged to the volunteer fire department, too. He was quite active. My mother moved back to town. She didn't move back into town. She didn't participate in very much. She was a very quiet person. Not like me.
Pretty much stay at home?
She was a stay-at-home, sedate lady.
Huh.
And I suppose teaching school all those years did that for her. Anyway, then we lived there until, I was about 7 years old.
In Madison?
Yes. And I went to school first. After we moved into town, I went to school in a public school. And what else? And my dad still maintained his business, and my mother...
So he went back to the plumbing business?
Yeah.
Now, did he go to work for somebody, or did he have his own... He was just kind of a plumber on his own?
He went to work with his brother. And eventually his brother got out of the business, and my dad had his own business. And he maintained that until he was... Well, actually, until he died. He was killed in by a train. Hit his truck. And my mother then stayed at home by herself until she came to California to be with me.
And well, when you left, Now, when you say that, where in California did? Now you're out in California.
I came to Long Beach.
Okay.
And from Long Beach.
But this is after you've been married and stuff that she
Oh,
she eventually came out. Okay.
Oh, I was married. I forgot to tell you about that, and that was an important step.
Well, I was kind of go back to Madison when you're in school. What can you remember about your school days in Madison? Was it a full? Did you go the full 12 years? I mean, sometimes back then people, you know.
No, I got out of the one-room school when I went back to town, and I went through the 8th grade in Madisonville City School, and then I went to Madisonville High School, graduated from that, and then I went to Murray State. Murray, Kentucky State University.
You're a college girl.
Not too much. I only went a year.
Was that was kind of unusual, wasn't that? I mean, I'm under the impression that was unusual for a woman to go to college at that period of time during that.
Oh no.
No, not really.
No, not from by the time I graduated from high school.
Did you have good grades? Were you a good student?
I was a B student.
You were a B student? Oh, that's pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
Got you into college.
But I interrupted my schooling and my training and got married.
Well. Okay. So this stranger blows into this college town? Is that what happened?
No, he blew into my hometown, and my dad hired him to work for him.
So this guy just shows up, gets hired on. He's as a plumber working for your dad, and what was his name?
He really wasn't a plumber.
But he could talk
the line. He was a jack of all trades.
And what was his name?
His name was Otto.
Did he have a middle name?
No.
Okay.
Otto Kalteich. And eventually we got married. And went
How old were you at that time?
21.
You were 21? How old was he? Was he an older man?
He's 6 years older than I.
Uh-huh.
And we went to Chicago to live because his grandmother was there and she had raised him. And he had lived with her. And he had nobody else to live with her to take much after her. So we went back there.
Did your mom and dad approve of this guy?
Yeah, they did. They liked him. He was a good socializer.
He knew how to schmooze, huh?
He knew how to schmooze.
Well, would you say that's probably one of his strong points?
Yeah, he could polish the apple. And anyway, we lived in Chicago for a year. And then I...
What year was this?
35 and 36.
Yeah.
And, no, let's see, Gary was born in 30. It was 33 and 34. And then I went back home and stayed for a while, and Gary was born. That's my oldest son. And
which year was that? That was 36 he was born?
That was 35.
35 he was born.
And then in 37 Janine was born. And meantime I worked between times, between the time the kids were growing up. I worked. I had to.
And what was your husband doing?
And not a whole lot. What do you want me to say?
Well, I don't know.
Anyway, then...
did he make a living? Was he earning any money?
Not much.
Not much?
No. Those were hard times. It was during the Depression years, too.
Uh-huh.
And my husband could do almost anything that he tried to do. But that was the problem, I think. He never accomplished anything to any great extent.
And he just tried a lot of different things, though. Okay.
And he liked to do everything. So he was never too well accomplished in anything.
Okay. So what kind of job did you get during that time?
I worked for Woolworths, 5 and 10
The 5
cents
and
a
dime. Okay.
And I had left there when I got married, and then when I went back to town, I worked for him again. And then I was gone again, and I came back and I worked for him again. I always had a job there.
So, is this when, after you guys had moved to Chicago and Gary and Janine were born, were they both born in Chicago?
No, they were both born in Kentucky.
Oh, okay. And so, but then you moved to Chicago after they were born?
No, I never went back after they were born.
Okay. So we went from...
My folks didn't want me to go, and actually the finances were not there for me to go. So I stayed at home.
Okay.
And
so at this time, Gary and Janine are both born.
Yeah.
And you're living in Madison still, or
Yeah.
you've moved back to Madison. You're working at the Woolworths, and Dad's just kind of off doing whatever.
Yeah. And then Janine was about 15 months old when we moved to Long Beach.
Now, what was it? Why all the way from Madison to Long Beach?
Well, your Uncle Carl came out here, and he persuaded your dad to come out too.
Now, had you ever met Uncle Carl before?
Yeah.
Before Long Beach, did you?
Yeah, he had been to our house in Kentucky.
Okay.
And so we came out here, and then the war came along, and I took the children and went back to Kentucky because they were afraid for me to stay on the coast.
So what you guys, everybody moved out to Long Beach because Uncle Carl said there's work out there. And then the war started up. And so did Uncle Carl and Dad then work in a war-related industry
Your dad
there in Long Beach?
Yeah. Your Uncle Carl joined the service, the Army. And your dad worked on Terminal Island in the naval end of it.
Okay. But because they were afraid of the shelling of the coast and the naval regions, you moved back to Madison.
They were afraid that something would happen to the kids and I because
Well, did you
of
guys,
the war.
did you fly back or?
No, we went back on the train.
Well, the train was pretty much the only way to really travel across country at that time, wasn't it?
Well, of course, there was a lot of planes too, but we didn't fly. In the first place, I couldn't hardly get a reservation on a train, much less a plane. So anyway, I went back with the kids, and then.
But this is just still the two of them, though, Gary and Janine.
Then their dad decided that he would come back there too and go to work at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, because that's where my brother-in-law was working, Eloise's husband.
And Eloise's husband is, his name is?
Lorraine.
Solomon. Okay.
So we went back to Oak Ridge, and nothing good happened to us in Oak Ridge. Everything was wrong.
What was there a military plant in Oak Ridge, or is there?
Oh, the atomic bomb plant was there.
Yeah, that's
the big one.
Mm-hmm. So that's where it was being basically developed at the time.
And at that time, if you hadn't been born in Tennessee, you're south of the Mason-Dixon line, you were nobody, you know. So we lived in housing that was built just for this city. It was nothing. It was just a hillside. And then these big plants, and then at the same time they built housing for all the people that would come there to work. And there's about 40,000 people there. So
they built the whole city around this production
yes.
plant in Oak Ridge.
And the hospital was a huge, big hospital. Had the finest doctors from all over the country there. And they had the professional scientists were all at Oak Ridge and everything too, you know. And but people in Knoxville, Tennessee, which was our closest neighbor, frowned on us and looked down on us because we'd get off the bus and have mud on our shoes. And, you know, they knew we were from Oak Ridge. And we weren't shown very much courtesy. And
so they almost discriminated against you just because
so
of where you were.
I never liked Oak Ridge. I never liked Tennessee for that reason. So eventually, when we had a chance to leave again, we did.
Well, how long were you in Oak Ridge?
About 3 years. In the meantime, your dad got an eye put out with a baseball.
What? Now, how did that happen?
He got in the way of the baseball.
Well, I mean, what? Just company picnic or?
At a game, baseball game.
What, just sitting in the stands, or?
No, he was on the field with the team.
Did
he played baseball?
He played baseball.
Yeah.
With just for fun, city
Yeah.
league teams, or?
He belonged to a couple of local teams, but he was not a professional. And anyway,
what just for fun, because obviously with as many boys as I have, what position was he? Any good? Was he a good player? Did you go watch him play? Well, we all think we are.
He played catcher.
He was a catcher.
So then, after he got his eye put out, ended up in the hospital. Then Janine ended up with spinal meningitis in the hospital, and Gary ended up falling off the back end of a truck and had a skull fracture. He almost died. It was about 3 or 4 days before we knew he'd live at all. But anyway, I thought that too much had happened to us there, and I wanted to leave.
And this was all in Oak Ridge when all of this had happened there, huh?
So we left.
Uh-huh.
And then we came back to California. And I've been out in California almost ever since.
And then when you came back out to California, you moved back to Long Beach, or? And now, during this time, I guess, while in Oak Ridge, you weren't working or anything?
No, I wasn't.
You were taking care of it?
I did too. I worked at the hospital in the office for a short time.
Okay.
Probably 8 or 9 months is all.
And Dad worked in the manufacturing down in that plant?
No, he was a sign painter.
He was a sign painter.
Uh-huh.
And so was there a big need for sign painters in Oak Ridge?
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, he was real proud of himself because he made a license plate for President Roosevelt.
Oh, he did?
Oh, yes.
But have they hand painted them, or? Serious?
Because Roosevelt came down to visit the installation there, and it was quite a big deal. So, and he had to have special cards, special plates, and everything.
Go ahead.
Oh, he made the plates for him.
Wow.
And then after the war had about ended by that time, and then we left and came back to California. And I've been out here almost ever since.
And what year was it you came back, or did you move back to Long Beach?
Let's see, about 39, I guess it was.
And still only 2 kids at this point? Okay.
And then in 44, Carol was born. That's the second daughter. And then after that, Carl was born, and then Larry.
Okay, so you're living in Long Beach, and you're at home, and where's Dad? Was he working just painting signs, or was he? He
worked on Terminal Island.
And what was?
As a sign painter.
What was Terminal Island?
Terminal Island was the base for all the ships.
Okay. That was the Southern California, one of the big naval bases.
That's out of Los Angeles.
Okay.
In Long Beach.
So he was an independent. He didn't work for the.
Yes, he did.
Oh, he did work for the government.
Or for a contractor who worked for the government. Contracted from the government.
Okay. So then Janine was born.
Janine was born.
Was life getting any better or easier, or?
Not really. It's the same old story. Your father was an alcoholic.
And had he been that since you met him, or?
No, it just grew on him. The longer he lived, the worse he got. And I don't know if he tried to quit or not. I got him into going to AAA, AAA, Alcoholics Anonymous, but that didn't work. Nothing worked for him. He had a mind of his own. So.
And was he so he was a pretty heavy drinker by the time he moved back to Long Beach?
He was what?
He was pretty much a heavy drinker when you moved back to Long Beach?
Yeah, he was. So after let's see, I guess we were still in Long Beach. I don't remember where we were. I guess we were still in Long Beach, I guess, when he got killed.
No.
In an automobile accident.
Oh, no.
And that.
Oh, we were in San Diego then.
Long Beach.
Not when.
Oh, San Diego.
Well, okay. Was Carl born in Long Beach?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you remember most about Carol as a baby?
Oh, she was.
Was she fussy, baby? Was she?
She was a beautiful baby. We called her Butch.
Hear that, sis?
She, yeah. She was a beautiful baby, but she was a husky child, a little girl. Janine had been so dainty and feminine and doll-like. Carolyn came along. She was a lustrous, bigger child, and very independent.
Did Janine have a nickname? If Carol was called Butch.
No.
Did Gary have a nickname?
No.
No? Okay.
And I remember one time when Gary was 8 years old, his Uncle Carl took him out deep sea fishing on one of the boats, and he caught the biggest fish on the boat. And there was a protest because he was a child and he didn't pay the full fare to ride the boat. But he got to keep the fish. I have a picture of that somewhere. But anyway.
So life goes on, no big shakes happening, and you guys are still in Long Beach. Then Dad's just out sign painting and drinking.
And he'd work for a week and get the money, and then he'd go off on a binge. And he might be gone for a week, or he might be gone for a month. And that's the kind of life that so I had to raise my children practically alone.
And it was like this even before Carl was born?
Yeah.
And so on one of his return trips or something, then voila, Carl. Kind of, sort of. I mean.
And then you came along, totally unexpected.
Well, that was 8 years later. I'm 8 years after Carl.
Your dad had been gone for 3 or 4 months. I hadn't heard, didn't know where he was or anything. But after he was gone, I found I was pregnant. So I suffered along with you for 9 months. And about a month before you were born, he called me someplace. He was in Illinois someplace. And I told him. And he said he'd come home. And he did. And he was there when you were born. But he didn't stay. He was on and off again all the time. So eventually, and I remarried after so long, after things had happened like they did. I remarried, and your dad was killed in an automobile accident.
You bet. You jumped too far ahead, though.
Huh?
You jumped too far ahead. And go back to Carl being born.
What about him?
Well, what about him?
He was born like any other kid.
Well, I know, but you're still living in Long Beach, and you're obviously struggling. How did you make ends meet? What were your? I mean, if Dad was
I
off,
never went on welfare.
But I mean, if Dad was off and cruising around on whatever.
Well, I worked.
Where were you working for?
I worked, part of the time I worked in a candy store in Long Beach where they made candy, and I packed candy, chocolate candies. And where else did I work? I worked in the store.
Just any place you really could.
Yeah. I never lost a job. I always worked.
You never worked in one of those dance parlors, did you? Dance for a dime?
No. I went there for fun one time.
Not the dime.
I went there for fun one time.
You went to pay a dime to get some dancing in?
No, the guy had to pay a dime to dance with me.
Oh, okay.
That was during the war. And my cousin from Denver came out, and he was in the Navy, and he came to our house, and he came to Long Beach. And he'd always take me out. God knows where your dad was. He's out somewhere else, but my cousin would take me out. And I got to see a little of the life on the other side.
Other than just being at home and working all the time.
Uh-huh.
That was pretty. So you have 4 kids, and you're out trying to support yourself, and God knows where Dad is, and life's life's not really all that great right then, huh? I mean, from one side of the coin, but it could always. But the kids were all healthy and growing like
God
weeds.
for that.
How now? Gary was born when? What year?
1935.
35, and Carl was born in 44, right?
Janine was born in 37. Carol was born in 41.
And then Carl was
44.
Was 44. So Gary was about 11. Well, he was about 11 when. Yeah, he had to be about 11 when Carl was born then.
And he was about 18 when you were born.
Mm-hmm. But so was like Gary. Did Gary kind of keep an eye on the younger?
When Gary got old enough, he helped financially.
Well, when you were working, who was watching the kids?
I had a neighbor lady watched.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and then the older kids took care of the younger ones.
Huh. That was about the only way you could really make it work, huh?
Uh-huh.
Where was Uncle Carl at this time? Was he still in the Army at this point?
No, he got out of the Army and he married your Aunt Helen.
Okay, let's confirm the rumor. Was Aunt Helen really a Las Vegas showgirl? Now tell the truth.
Not a showgirl, no.
Oh, but a something girl.
Well,
I'm just teasing.
She worked the strip.
She worked. She worked taking pictures of people in casinos and bars and things. And when she tells it, I think she tells it really like it was too.
Does
Although she didn't mean it that way. But she always said that, and Janine always called her down on it. Aunt Helen, do you know what that means? She'd say, I worked the strip. She worked the strip. But commonly speaking, that would be, meant she was.
Yeah. Was a lady of the evening?
She solicited on this.
A lady of the evening.
And she tells it that way. I mean, that's the way she expresses herself. I don't really think she was.
But you don't think she was.
Not that. No.
Okay.
But she managed to make her own way.
And she eventually ended up working for Social Security, though, right?
Oh.
Didn't she worked there and retired from Social Security Administration, didn't she?
Oh, sure.
You bet.
But that was years later.
But that's where so at that point, really, Uncle Carl was hanging around Las Vegas a lot.
Well, that was way before Social Security.
You bet. So he wasn't. It's not like. So he wasn't even. I guess what I was getting at. He wasn't even close by, really.
Not much.
To be of any.
Not much. He gave me a helping hand once in a while.
And he was Dad's older or younger brother? He was his younger brother, right?
Younger. But going to say.
Well, with Carl being born in '44, and frankly, that's during the war years too, wasn't it? But weren't we? At that point, we were pretty much heavily involved. Weren't we involved with World War II during that time?
No.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
40. Wasn't it December
Well,
40?
it was from 1940 to 45.
Yeah, that's right.
So those were war years, though.
Uh-huh.
Was there anything about
I
living in?
worked then.
Was there anything like? Did you work in like we see the war
No.
efforts?
That's when I was working in the candy factory.
What do you remember about the war years?
Oh, your dad was a warden that walked the streets at night to watch for any subversive activity that might be going on, or planes that, and cautioning people about their lights and all that. We had to keep our house darkened.
Because you were in Long Beach, and there was still
all of our window shades were taken down and painted black on the outside, so that we could have a light on in the house and couldn't be seen outside.
Because they were still afraid of the Japanese attacking the mainland.
Oh yeah. And the sirens would go off, and everybody'd run for cover. We never had any bombs dropped or anything, but there's always that fear that there might be.
And because a lot of times, even with me, I see on TV or something about people in war bonds and collecting scrap metals and.
Oh, that was done. Sure, that was always done. If you saved all the scrap metal, the government bought it, and they converted it to whatever they needed it for. Like we save things today to have used again.
Kind of like a recycling. They recycled it into armament and things.
And it was a time when food was rationed. We couldn't get a pound of sugar for maybe months at a time, and we'd use syrup or brown sugar. We could get it in our coffee or our tea, and very little meat. We could get we had ration books, and we could only buy so much at a time, and only when they had it.
Wow.
And no butter. Nope. And coffee, coffee was rationed too, so we could only buy so much coffee. So much for a certain length of time, And so we had to conserve it. If anything left over, we always warmed it up. Used it again.
You ever reuse the grounds more than once?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
That was done too.
Well, so the war ended, everybody's happy, and it's time for you. What year was it that you left Long Beach, and where did you go from there?
Oh, I don't remember.
Don't remember what? Was the war over when you left Long Beach?
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Well,
yes.
Yeah.
I don't remember when we went back to Kentucky, I guess. And then we came to California again.
And whereabouts in California after you came back from Madisonville?
Your dad, and I don't know where he did up in Washington, and he had a sister who lived in Washington. So his sister's husband and him came back to Kentucky and got us in a ramshackle little car that we didn't know if I would be afraid to get in it to go across the street now. But anyway, we came all the way back to California, to Washington, and settled there for a while.
And that was where, in Vancouver?
Yeah. And then
Is that and that area was called, the area that you lived in was called Fruit Valley? Is that where you guys lived?
Fruit Valley.
Okay.
And anyway, it rained all the time up there, so your dad couldn't have much work. So he left there and he ended up in Modesto. That's how I got to Modesto and leave. And then he got some money ahead that he could send for us. We came to Modesto.
So you lived up in Vancouver while Dad came down here.
That was only for a couple of months or so. And we lived in a ramshackle old hotel. Got a couple of rooms for us down there. That's where we lived. And cooked in the back of the restaurant. And stayed there till we could do better. And then we got a chance to get a trailer house down in Ceres. So we moved out of that place and went to Ceres. Lived in Ceres in a mobile home.
How we look, because like we're in your manufactured house today, but I don't think this is I don't want the kids to get the idea that this is what manufactured housing was like in the 50s.
No.
Describe your mobile home that you moved into in Ceres.
Well, it was just one width, and it was about 50 feet long.
Okay.
And it had in the front end was the living room and the kitchen and the bathroom. No, there was no bathroom. We used a trailer court bath for the bathroom. And the back part of it was a bedroom. And I had a couch and a bed in the front part, and the double bed in the back. So that was our living accommodations.
And this is for a family of 6, because you got 4 kids now, you and Dad, right?
Yeah, but your dad wasn't home much. I got this. I was lucky enough to get this, but he was gone, and I just had the kids. And then when he came back, that's when we came back into Modesto properly.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was gone again, and I got a job at Sears, and worked for Sears, and I finally got a old garage that was converted to a living quarters. I lived there. We did have a toilet in the house.
What kind of work did you do for Sears?
I was in sales.
What department?
In the children's and fashions. And then I worked there a short time, and I was promoted to a department manager. And this year, Mr. Thieker, who hired me there, and he liked me real well, but he was promoted and went to open the first store that they had in Honolulu.
Wow.
And when I was in Hawaii, when Bill and I were in Hawaii, I looked him up in the phone book, and he was still listed in the phone book there. But when I got home, I saw in the paper that he died.
Oh.
And he was very, very good manager, and he befriended me, and everybody liked him. But anyway, I stayed with Sears for almost 20 years, just like the
In Modesto?
Here in Modesto. And then when I left Modesto, I went to Washington or Portland, and that's when I went. That's when I went where you knew me in what was that, Fruit Valley?
Yeah.
Because my brother-in-law and sister-in-law were still there, and I went up there, and didn't work out, so I left. I went to work for Sears in. I came back to Modesto, and then I left and went up to. What was that town outside of?
Outside of where? San Diego?
No, up north.
Vancouver?
No, not Vancouver. Where you went to high school?
Oh, Grants Pass.
Grants Pass. I moved to Grants Pass, and then I went to work for Sears again. So I put in another 5 or 6 years at Sears. Anyway, I had over 25 years with Sears.
Mm-hmm.
With a broken record.
Well, now wait a second here. Because I was born in 1952.
Yeah.
Okay? And I remember your mom coming to live with us.
Yeah.
Okay? And it just seems
that was in Modesto.
Yes, out on Haddon Avenue. 2030 Haddon. Had a wiener dog for a number sign.
That's where my mother bought a house. Of course, I got the house when she died.
And then, but we left there and moved to down in San Diego in the Mission Valley area, Allied Gardens. Remember?
I told you I couldn't remember anything.
Well, that's why I'm bringing it up. Remember, I was the only reason I remember that is because of the house, and we left here, we left Modesto, and it was Allied Gardens in Mission Valley. And it seems to me, Gary had already joined the service right after I was born, and I think Janine had already graduated from Modesto High or someplace.
That's where we lived when Janine got married.
And we were living, that's right, we were living in Allied Gardens, and that's where Carol met Chuck as well, wasn't it?
And I worked for the Bay Company down there.
That's right, down in Mission Valley at the May Company.
And then I left there because I went to work at El Cajon.
El Cajon at Unimart, if I'm not mistaken, or was it?
I don't, yeah,
I
worked there.
Or Whitney's. I know you worked for Whitney's there too, didn't you? In El Cajon, there was a Whitney's, and that was a clothing store. And
yeah. Whitney's where I worked, not Unimart.
Well, Whitney's kind of important, I think, because isn't that where you met Doris?
Yeah.
She worked at Whitney's, and it's kind of important that we would remember that that's where you met Doris, because Doris's husband was Jack, and Jack's father eventually became
my husband.
There you go. So I want to make
I didn't get. I told you should have let me write all this down. I could have had straight.
Well, wait. We'll give time. You can have that time. But but did you work at Whitney's first and then Unimart? It seems like you worked at Unimart a long time.
Yeah, I went to work for Whitney's. I don't remember who I worked first. Anyway, then when I got fired from Whitney's.
Oh, you did? What'd you do? What'd they say you did?
Nothing. I couldn't get along with the woman I was working under.
So she just told you not to come back one day, or?
Yeah. And she didn't tell me anything. The boss came to me one day. I was manager of the whole women's section of the store. And he came to me one day and he says, you're not busy. He says, let's take a walk. And I knew right then it's something, because that wasn't like him. Although he was on very friendly terms with his employees. But he said, let's go have a cup of coffee. And I thought, he's got something on his mind. So I went across the street and had a cup of coffee with him, and he told me that she had asked me to be terminated. And he says, there's nothing I can do but do what she says, but he says, I'm going to give you the name of somebody. I want you to go down to the May Company. and says, I think you can get on there, because they were just building the store, just ready to open it. And I went to the Bay Company, and sure enough, I got right on. And I worked there until I didn't make any money, couldn't hardly make enough to live on. So I left there and went to Unimart. That was a discount house, and they paid me good wages. It was a union store, but I didn't have to belong to the union because I was hired in as management.
So you just hired in as a manager there, right? I remember going into that store a lot. You had to have a card to get in, but you must have been fairly well known, because when I came to the store, they'd always just press the buzzer for me. They'd let me come in. I remember that. And your department was almost the very first department when you walked in the store, on the right-hand side.
Oh, no, right, the whole front. With Larry, we'd have done something more than we've done. We put the screws on them, that's for sure. Wish you could come down before the summer's gone and try and see if you can't make it. Good luck, always. I love you.
You got anything for the boys?
And the boys, well, sure. Eeny, meeny, miny, moe. Who am I supposed to talk to first? Why don't I just talk to all of them?
Okay.
Anyway, well, we miss you boys too. I hope that you young ones will get to come to see us before you get grown up like your big brothers. And I know, hear that you're graduating from high school, and that you're going to take your what do you call it?
Mission?
You're going to do your mission, and I want to wish you all the good luck in the world. And next coming along,
John?
after James, is who's after James?
John?
No, the next oldest.
Joseph. No.
Yeah, John.
John?
James, John, Joe.
Oh, they've grown up,
Jordan.
so I can't distinguish one from the other now.
All right.
Well, John, I'll be waiting to hear from you too when you get ready to graduate. And
Come and see us.
why don't you come and see us this summer?
Okay.
You got a nice swimming pool for you.
The summer is over.
Well, it's coming up again.
So, I wish you the best regards from us, and I hope you keep going to school until you're a teacher. And maybe coming up to see you someday, but I don't know when. Goodbye, we'll see you.
Okay. Yep.
Well, I'm going to start at the top. John, I wish you could have been here. We've enjoyed your husband's time that he's had with us. Wish you could have a lot more. Wish you could have come with us. And the boys,
And the girls.
the oldest one is
James?
James.
At home.
James, you're going to be a man of the world at the time I see you again. You're going to be graduated, and I hear you're going on your mission, and I think that's wonderful. But let me hear from you when you go. I like to keep up with you, keep in touch with you. And then there's John.
Joseph.
Well, just a minute. John, you're going to be the big boy of the house now when your brother leaves. So be a good leader and take care of your little brothers and help them out. And come to see us when you can. We've got a big swimming pool.
In the backyard.
And then there's Job. Little Job. I tell you, Job, I think I know you better than anybody. And your grandpa sure thinks a lot of you, and he misses you. And when you grow up, so you can come to see us down here in California, you come down. We'll have a place for you.
Not only Joe, but everybody.
And then, why didn't you say all that?
He is.
And then there's Jordan. And Jordan, you don't know your grandma very well, but if you come to see me, we'll get acquainted. I guarantee you that. So be a good boy, grow up like your brothers, be as nice a boy as your brothers are. Then we can all be proud of all of you. And come see us sometime. We love you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Oh,
What?